Welcome, Abby, Jim, Kayla, Lou, Mark. Hello. We're just getting spun up on the YouTube channel. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Discovering Seasonality in Your Business. I am Dave Meyer, the president and owner of BusyWeb, and we have a incredibly fun chat today. We're going to talk about discovering seasonality in your business and on here. So, Jim, thanks for the note to be our proofreader for 15 bucks an hour. I think we'll take you up on that. So, happy to have everybody with us. This is intended to be an interactive session today. So if you do have questions, you can either leave them live on the YouTube channel if you're watching live on YouTube, or of course in the Zoom webinar if you're watching on Zoom. You can do that via the Q&A tool or in the webinar chat. So please keep the questions coming. Would love to hear what seasonality looks like in your business. And we are going to get going because we have a big agenda today. I'm going to go through a number of things that we all need to kind of consider, especially in B2B marketing. Um, I mentioned that a few of our attendees today do have kid-based businesses, and some of those are retail. So that's obviously very seasonal, and it's a big change right now as school is letting out and things are kind of resetting for the summer. So, but for B2B, a lot of times it's a little less obvious and does tend to go around the big things in life and kind of follows people's lives, of course. So summer is definitely going to be different than fall or winter. Around the fiscal new year or the actual financial new year for businesses, sometimes that gets different, and your industry might be very different than traditional industries. So keeping an eye on that, watching your data is going to be important. And so we're going to talk about identifying trends using data, and I have some screens to share on that. We're going to talk about lead time and how to get ahead of those business cycles, and then how to measure and adapt and grow. You all hopefully know who we are, but BusyWeb is a B2B services and manufacturing focused HubSpot and marketing sales enablement agency. So we're based in Minneapolis. We have 25 folks with us. We've been doing this for 25 years now. So we know a little bit about this stuff. And if we haven't chatted before, I would love to connect after this. You are going to get an email for everyone that registered today with a recording of today's event, and also the premium giveaway that we're offering at the end. We actually have a white paper on helping you line all of this up. So you're going to get a link to that as well. So let's talk about what seasonality means for businesses. And again, I'm going B2B focused a little bit more, but for everyone, you need to figure out how all of this stuff is going to happen for your biz. Um, some of the folks that registered, a number of you actually submitted a little bit about what seasonality means to you. We have one that's a youth-focused business with rec and competitive gymnastics, dance, and ninja classes. And of course, that's going to be seasonal around the seasons of the school year and probably around semesters or trimesters, depending on what the school district locally is going to be. And there's always seasonal impacts, especially in the Northwest where BusyWeb is based, to, if there's snow, it's going to slow down, or there's other things going on. Some of our folks said summer is usually slow. Enrollment fluctuates depending on the season. Summers are lower enrollment due to outside activities and cabin weekends. Fall spikes in enrollment as families get back to a routine. Some folks have said there's stronger demand after the holidays, which is pretty cool. Usually for BusyWeb, there's a dead spot right between Christmas and New Year's, and it's hard to get around that. Summer tends to be a big season for some of our attendees, and year-end connections around the fiscal new year, that tends to be a big deal. And then, of course, we have one of our attendees here who sells kids' clothes, and it really doesn't get any more seasonal than that, and you need to stay ahead of it, which I would imagine managing inventory can be pretty tricky. So as we look at that, then what's the big issue or concern to consider? As you're looking through this, it helps to know what your seasonality is in your business because it helps you to anticipate demand and keep ahead of it. And also, you need to think about not just the demand as far as sales, but the demand in your buyer's journey. Your buyer's journey is generally, depending on how long your sales cycle is, at least the length of that sales cycle before the traditional season. So if you're trying to get ready for the summer season, you really need to think about it a month or two in advance of the summer. So you need to be thinking in March around summer if you're trying to reach people and get ahead of them for those closes in the summer. How to optimize your marketing spend. You only want to spend when you're most likely to either need it because you're trying to bolster and offset weak demand, or to take advantage and capitalize when there's a lot of already solid interest. And so I'm going to do some screen sharing around how you can actually manage that and watch your budget. And then maximizing your campaign effectiveness. Things are going to happen. And the more you start to look at the data in your biz, the better off you're going to be as far as what people are going to experience and see for the kinds of content that you're leaning into. So as we look at that, that's going to be a big deal. So let's go into it a little bit more. So, as far as demand fluctuations, you really need to be concerned about staying ahead of the buyer's journey. And the buyer's journey goes from, attention and identifying that there's a need to identifying and looking at the different competitive opportunities inside of that. So you identify, I have a problem as a customer, and then you identify who you're going to look at as a solution for that problem. And then you're going to make the purchase decision. And then the customer or the business needs to continue to interact with that person so that they don't just disappear. So to keep them coming back for more. So thinking about how that works, you want to tailor your campaigns for maximum impact and to achieve that operational efficiency to make sure that you're getting who you're trying to connect with and where. Sometimes it makes a lot of sense. And especially like restaurants and retail will try to offset low demand with immediate marketing. For B2B, sometimes it makes more sense to lean in when the times are good and to double down to get all of the input or all of the best output that you can when people are already interested in what you do. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. You can optimize your ad spend. So sometimes, and inside of budgets, you can see that, seasonal needs help you to stay ahead of demand on the one side, but also optimizing for slow times. One of the cool things about especially like Google Ads and most online ad campaigns is that you can modify and change them at any time. If you see that your marketing is just not producing the results that you're thinking or that you're looking for, maybe it's a bad season and it doesn't make sense for you to spend money at that exact moment. And instead, you should double down where people are already interested. So you can pause and then you can activate it, or you can set it and schedule it to come out at different times. The tools that we like to use, HubSpot is one of our favorites. You can schedule additional posts or additional emails or additional follow-ups and even manage ad spend out of HubSpot to either bolster or to take advantage of hot times. And then it's important to set yourself a reminder if you have like hand rolled marketing. So if you're doing Google Ads and it's just kind of you as a solo practitioner, set yourself a reminder to hit or review your marketing and your sales budgets in order to make sure you're just not wasting money when there's simply no demand there. So you can set that right into Google as you're pushing ads and all of the other content that you're doing. One thing that I like to really do is to align it up with seasonal buying patterns. So you can see on screen our social posting. May is usually a incredibly hot month for marketing effectiveness for BusyWeb because everyone is checking in one last time before they start checking out for the summer. We've kept our eye on seasonality very closely over the past 25 years of BusyWeb's existence. And usually summer slows down. Now, for some reason last year, it was the absolute opposite. We had a relatively stable January, February, March, which is usually pretty solid for us. And then in the beginning of the spring season, the May through July, we saw just an incredible lift. So, and the weirdest one was July last year was actually our best month ever by a long shot. We just had a massive amount of business come in. So it was super, super weird. So we had to look at what we did inside of that season, what the political climate was, and what we saw as far as the open rates, the click-through rates, and if there was something really effective that we did earlier in that season. Because again, there's a system and a funnel that everyone needs to go through in their buyer's journey. And so that lead time probably meant that whatever we were doing in May was just on fire as far as effectiveness. So we had a great May, which set up a fantastic July, which is usually weird. So I don't know why that one happened exactly because there were a lot of things that went into it. But you can bet this year in May, we were very, very active. And so you can see all of the posts because we want to have a great summer again. Um, one of the cool things that you can probably notice inside of here is with the sharing and the ability to track all of your posts and budget and set them out, you can actually keep that workflow or that interest kind of bouncing and keep people reminded of what's going on in your business. So it's important to be consistent, but also to make note of the big seasonal things that are coming up. So you can bet, we talked about seasonality this time in June because we saw a huge lift last year for seasonality and in things that we were doing. And we wanted to kind of call attention to that in our inbound assets, in our content. So that's how that works for us. In order to streamline your operations inside of this, you might want to take advantage of or staff up. You can use tools like Google's business accounts, so Google business profiles, and you can see over time the interest and what your biggest call times are. You can look at that month over month, year over year, and see, okay, well, I know that we're going to get a ton of calls generally, either this time of the week, this time of the month, or this time of year. And so in order to make sure that you're connecting with that and planning for your inventory management, and inventory has two definitions in this case, our inventory of time and attention as a marketer, but also our physical inventory, depending on where we are, like for our student-focused businesses that are online, you want to make sure that you're bolstering that. If you know that you're going to have a massive amount of things coming in at the end of the school season because everybody's getting rid of all their school stuff, you want to take advantage of that and make sure that you're doing something to keep people coming in during the slow times as well. So I like to set up workflows for all of this. HubSpot makes it very easy to connect and remind. This happens to be a zoomed out on the left of the image, where all the little boxes are smaller. You can see where the overall input is, and I've just zoomed in on the very first part of this workflow. But it connects, it sets up and assigns people as what stage of the life cycle they appear to be by what kind of content they're interacting with. And then depending on that, we're actively going out and doing follow-up after a certain amount of time. So what I'm trying to do is optimize my workflow to match what I know the interest schedule or the interest calendar looks like for a given kind of person. So this one is actually the workflow associated with the webinars. And so you'll actually see at the end of this, we send out the recording and the offers that we give as part of that. So a couple days later, actually right after the event, you get that, and then we ask you a couple days after that, how did it go, and offer one recommendation. And of course, if you say, don't contact me again, after that, you don't get bothered anymore. It's important in all of your automation to make sure that you give people options and opportunities. This is where having a tool like HubSpot can make this easy, where people can simply opt out or change their preferences. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. If all you give people is an unsubscribe button, you're going to lose a lot of people in your system. But when they click, if you offer them, would you like to just hear from us less often? Or are we telling you, are we trying to connect with you about things that you're not actually interested in? And are you instead interested in these things? That can keep your list more proactive and more connected. So let's talk about some of the common seasons. And again, I'm going to talk about B2B, but I will interweave because about a third of our attendees today are direct retail folks. So I'm going to interweave in some retail or B2C seasons as well. So for me, and what it seems like the big seasons tend to be are planning and budgeting season, launch and growth, maturity and optimization, and evaluation and renewal. So as we go through these, you can kind of attach this to the seasons in the world, right? So planning and budgeting is probably spring, launch and growth is probably summer, maturity optimization is fall, that's the harvest, and evaluation and renewal, that's the winter. That's when you set aside and you go back into, okay, well, what worked this year? What set up? We've learned a lot. This is our fiscal year. We're changing things. We're watching our budgets. So how do we plan for the next year to have it all go again? So as we look at that, let's dig in a little bit deeper. And again, as a reminder, if you do have questions or thoughts about how your seasonality goes, would love to interact. And actually, at the end of today's thing or today's talk, I will be activating the ability for people to talk, and I'm going to pause or stop the live so that we can have a frank, easy conversation. So as we go in, planning and budgeting, the spring session or the spring season, right? That's your time to really set goals. So as you're connecting and thinking about, okay, well, here's what we know you need to plant before you're going to reaps, right? So you're thinking about what your upcoming season is going to be. And this is going to be different. It's not necessarily every spring you need to do planning and budgeting. And a lot of times people do this in November or December because you're trying to get ahead of the entire season or the entire next fiscal year. So as you look at this for your business and when your buyer's journey tends to line up with that season, you might need to set those goals earlier or later in the system. So as you set your goals, make sure that those goals are designed to be manipulatable inside of your marketing. So you need to not only have a goal of hitting specific revenue, but you need to have a goal of so many interactions inside of your marketing funnel in order to engage and connect the right people. So I like to talk about SMART goals when we're talking about planning. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. But for businesses, especially in B2B, it's not just a goal of I want so many people or I want so many clicks. You have to think about the stages in your buyer's journey or your life cycle in order to hit that. And so you're not thinking about or setting a goal to get so many people in. That's an optimal or an ideal end goal, but you need to think about how many MQLs or marketing qualified leads you need at any given stage in your business in order to get the right people in. Um, the way to do that is to literally set out and look at, okay, well, how many contacts or how many connections does it usually take from a person that clicks on our website all the way through to connecting with our sales team and closing a new deal. So as you back up from that, you want to take a look at this. I actually have a really interesting resource here that you can use and that I'm happy to share. This isn't built in. This is into the automated response. So if you want this, you're going to have to email me at dave@busyweb.com and I'd be happy to share this doc with you. But if you go, I'm just going to change screens here. This is the master marketing budget tool inside of HubSpot. It's a simple Google Sheet or an Excel doc. And you can go through the budget pages. You can see your product marketing budget, content, paid advertising, and it actually helps you. So you put in how many things you need, and it's going to spit out at the end of it how much input you can expect from search, display, retargeting, affiliate, social, and lead gen. There's branding and creative budget, website redesign budget if you need to get to a website and update your site. Generally, the rule of thumb is every couple of years you should be looking at this. We like to do our website updates on a more constant basis with our clients, where we're updating and changing things and prepping and planning along with the marketing, which tends to make it much more active and proactive. And then setting up a event budget. If you have a number of different events, you can have all of these inside of this simple tool. So there is a handy how to use it, and you can scroll right through all of these different budgeting options. But it's a pretty helpful little tool if you're interested in setting up your resources and working with management to make sure that you have everything that you need. So that's planning and budgeting. Next, launch and growth. So this would be the traditional summer of your business, right? So not necessarily summer, but when are you growing? When are you actually getting the most bang for your buck inside of your marketing? Or when do the deals come easiest for you? I'm guessing that summer for a clothing store for kids is literal summer where people are swapping, they're going through their, swapping out all of their school, all of their just left school content and clothes and trading those in and or looking for shorts and swimsuits and, breezy tops and all that stuff for the kids, right? As you're implementing your strategy, you need to set this down and make sure that all of the things that go from in B2B, a marketing qualified lead to a sales qualified lead makes sense. So marketing qualified leads are generally clicks and visits to your website or interactions with your marketing. So if someone opens an email from a newsletter that you sent them, if they respond to a social media post on LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter or X, if they connect with you somehow, that's the MQL. And then it turns to SQL or sales qualified lead as soon as either that person has done more things in your system. HubSpot, in our case, tracks the inputs and outputs. So every connection that person makes, if you open up or respond to a LinkedIn post, then you get a note from us a couple of days later. And then you might register or sign up for a webinar. And so all of those things are touches or touch points, and the system knows when you do this, and you can give people more of what they're looking for based on what they're doing. So automating that was when a MQL turns into an SQL or a sales qualified lead because the sales team has now received that lead and is trying to connect with that person or that deal personally. And that's how you acquire new customers, especially in B2B, right? So as you're looking through this, thinking about when do those customers come easy? When is it much harder to close a deal? When is it harder to connect or reconnect with people? And or is there just a long lead time from the first time you interact with people to the time when you close that deal and make that sale? At BusyWeb, we've noticed over the past couple of years that the sales cycle has started to elongate. Part of that is because we work with larger organizations that have more people that need to weigh in on any large purchase decision. Part of it is probably that the kinds of work that we're doing take a little bit more consideration before people interact with us and give us the thumbs up. If you're simply building a website or running an ad campaign, that's a smaller decision and a quicker turn than reevaluating and rebuilding all of your marketing structure. And so a lot of times that takes a little bit longer. So you need to think about that in that summer phase of your business. And then evaluation and renewal, right? This is fall. This is when people are coming in, you're reaping the benefits, you're connecting, and you're thinking about what happens. This tends to go into winter, right? Where you're thinking about, okay, well, what's my budget? What's my content need to look like over the next entire year? This is where I love the HubSpot tools inside of marketing, where you can really look through and like this is our month of marketing as of the past 30 days. So we've had 353 sessions that have led to 22 contacts that have led to 5 customers. That's actually about on par. And so we can see what our goals are and are we hitting those goals, but is what we're expecting to happen happening? And are we giving ourselves the right amount of time in order to close these down? Or if we see that, oh, we expected to have a ton of leads by this time, and we don't have nearly as many as we thought. So we need to reconvene and double down on some additional marketing in order to lift that back up. Because if we don't have great interactions in May, July is going to be hard. And so we want to make sure that we're ahead of that. And I can actually see in these trend lines here, these are my goal trend lines. So over like the first part of June, so this is actually only the last week. The first part of this week, we had lower than expected, but that actually makes sense because we were coming out of the Memorial Day weekend. Um, and now we're surpassing that again. So we're back on par for the interactions that we're thinking we need. We're actually way over on new contacts because our line we expect by the end of the month to hit here, and we just rocketed up on that. So that means that things are probably working. And so this is a great time for us to either connect and think about here's where we are, or to warn the operations team that, hey, we've got a massive amount of interest that's probably going to lead to a massive amount of additional new deals. And so everybody be ready, start thinking about vacation time and where we're at, because we're going to make sure that we're going to need to make sure that we have coverage for this expected big boom that's coming. So that's kind of the seasons that I see for businesses. And so now, how do you do those trends and identify those for yourself in your business? And I'm super curious if any of you have explicit seasonal measurement that you like to do or things that are great indicators. I'd love to hear that either in the chat or in the Q&A, and to get a chance to talk about that because it's very different for different businesses. But here are some big ones that we see after we look through data for our clients. So first, of course, is sales data. And if you have a CRM, you've probably got that on lock where you know what people are doing and how people are interacting in order to get to that sales data. So we always have a fantastic May is great sales data to know and to have because then you can start to bank on that, especially if you've been around for a while. BusyWeb's been around for 25 years. Our data is fairly bankable, but marketing keeps us on our toes, right? So we can take that data with a grain of salt and realize that everything's always up in the air, but we can generally understand that specific times of the year are going to be busier. And what we do at BusyWeb is we try to capitalize on hot times and then reset and reconvene during what we know are slow times. And for us, it actually works in really well because, especially for larger web or CRM projects, we can sell hard when the selling's good and then build during build times or during slow times to give ourselves some breathing room. Looking at your website traffic, I have a couple of screens coming up where you'll be able to see Google Analytics is brilliant at this. You can actually use HubSpot's data and expand out and look at what the seasonality is. When are hotter or slower times? If you're doing this correctly, and if you're tagging your content with the right input and the right themes, you can see what kinds of content perform best and what themes in your content perform best. So we have clients that do commercial printing or stamping or manufacturers that do precision parts and stamps and dies. That's all very, very seasonal, but also has a massive lead time, sometimes 18 months worth of lead time. So not only do you have to think about, okay, well, here's what's coming up in the next couple of months, you have to think about here's all of the things that are going to happen perhaps between now and then. You've got an election coming up, and so that's going to throw everything on tilt because there's so much more noise and vitriol in the media that it makes it harder to connect and get through, and people can tend to get kind of panicky when everything is doom and gloom and you're seeing pictures on the local news of the opposing candidate, doing something terrible in dark red letters and all kinds of stuff, right? That's just noise that you have to overcome. And so think about how that works. And if you know your traffic, you can get in there. Looking at your customer inquiries, you're getting data from your customers through form fills, through emails, through connections. Data is really your treasure trove of reading the tea leaves to understand what leads you to the very next deal and to help you build out the seasonality of your business. Also look at your industries. We have folks on this call today from the Manufacturers Alliance. They have lots of fantastic data in order to help you plan for your seasonality. They take the consolidated information from dozens or hundreds of businesses and help you learn from that data. So this is why you should be a member of orgs like the Manufacturers Alliance or the MPMA, which is a great partner of ours as well. And understanding what you get from that data and just looking at it and thinking about, okay, well, I know this is going to be tough, or this is going to be easy, or this is going to generate a lot of interest. Industry reports, again, looking at them, following it along, making sure that you're connected and thinking about your business is incredibly helpful. So make sure that you're looking at that season. To visualize this, I like to use HubSpot. Here's our example. This is a similar report to the one that I showed before, but it's actually the seasonal data over the entirety of our history using HubSpot. So from the beginning of 2017 till now, you can see that our sessions have been on a pretty much continual improvement. But once you start getting into new contacts and especially new customers, there are some very distinct bumps in the data where we see it jump up sharply. We've been very lucky in that we haven't seen significant decreases in information or data, but you can see where things have gone really, really fast. So right around that 2020 time, this is why BusyWeb had a pretty decent beginning to the pandemic. Everyone was panicking because they couldn't do marketing like they normally do. They couldn't have in-person events or trade shows, especially in the manufacturing and industrial worlds. And so they were looking to bolster that with webinars. And so there was a ton of content and online things where people were reconnecting. And so we saw that huge lift right there. And as you see, it kind of grew dramatically ever since. So that's always helpful. You get a different bit of data and a lot more granular data inside of Google Analytics, though. And so here is just the past like 6 months for BusyWeb. So or no, it's the past 12 months for BusyWeb. So over the past year, very defined hotspots of data. So right around that July timeframe, right when we were just closing deals left and right. So this is summer. You can see that the fall gets a little slower, dips right around January, and then again, it popped right up again in early spring. So we're always very ready for spring and for summer, and we're planning and we're bolstering what we do in fall and winter. And so we know what performs well. We can see user activity over time, and I can see that broken out by the past 30 days, by the past 7 days, and by the past day, where I can see all of the content. And then I can even see where my hot regions are. And so I can see, of course, the United States is the big one. Um, Poland and India have pretty decent content. Frankly, a lot of those are probably folks that are trying to connect with us and or pitch their services. In the marketing world, as in a lot of places, there's a lot of folks that try to um, promote their services overseas to help you save money. We personally don't prescribe or subscribe to that mentality, and we keep everyone local in our company. But there's a lot of people that do it, and so there's always a lot of messaging and visiting that we see inside of that. And so we sort of discount that because our connections and our audience, our clients are in the US. We have a few in Canada as well, but for all of these others, that's probably not content or clients that we need to worry about. That's just literally people that are trying to solicit our services or solicit services for them to us. Another thing that I really like to try and to use is Google Trends. If you go to g.co/trends, you can enter in any topic in under the sun and compare and contrast that to other topics. So you can do 3 or 4 other topics. In this case, I compared inbound marketing to account-based marketing. And so you can see that over the past year, over the past 12 months, in the entire United States, you're seeing a market bump right around here. And you know what that actual timing is right here? This inbound marketing bump, that's the inbound conference that HubSpot holds every year. So in September, there's a big inbound conference. That's why there's that spike. And so taking advantage of the extra input or the extra interest there can be incredibly helpful. And then things tend to bounce around. But I'm comparing that versus account-based marketing, which is more of a B2B and commercial sized input, where people are looking to target several people at a given organization that they're trying to land the next deal from. And so there's just lower information. But if there was an ABM conference, you can bet there would be a bump there too. But you can see that it's just kind of bouncing and commercial. Interestingly, here with Google Trends, you can also see where the hottest regions are. So if I'm doing, again, United States wide, I could easily do Minnesota wide or even my city or my neighborhood, depending on where I live. And I can see the seasonality inside of there. Now, the Dakotas, Montana, Colorado tend to be a little light in inbound interest or searches, but Minnesota and Iowa and Nebraska and the other folks inside of here tend to be pretty hot for people being interested in what we do. So we should probably focus a little bit more on maybe Idaho or Nevada or any of the other darker blue spots and see if we can get some additional lift because we have a higher than normal search volume in a specific spot. So it makes a lot of sense to try that. So let's talk a little bit more about how to connect up and how to really plan for that lead time then. And again, if you have questions, would love to get your input and feedback. Everybody's hanging on. Thank you so much for connecting with us. And this is always fun to deliver these and to interact with y'all. So as we look at this, in order to account for that lead time, you do need to figure out what your traffic looks like and to get some longer term data. Important to note that if you had Google Analytics, the original analytics, and of course it's all switched over to Google Analytics 4 now, but as of July 1st, Google Analytics classic data, the universal analytics data is going away. So if you switched over to Google Analytics 4, which everyone did as of a year ago, your old data is going away in about 3 weeks. So make sure that you download that data so that you've got it, because you can't just click on it anymore in Google Analytics after next month. July 1st, this all goes away. So making sure that you connect with that. Campaign development, thinking about how to plan and execute. There's a lot of time and data that goes into, all of the different steps in the workflows that we set up, right? So making sure that you're connecting on that. HubSpot has a campaign tool that makes this very easy, and you can see which LinkedIn posts connected and influenced which emails, which influenced and connected which customers. So you can actually go all the way back and say, this LinkedIn post directly impacted these 4 customers, which were responsible for $3 million in revenue for the organization. This does a couple of things. It helps you prove your worth to management as a marketer, but it also helps you notice and double down on the kinds of content that are most productive for your business and the timing that's most productive for your business. One of the cool things about the tools that we use, there's actually a kind of big data association with like HubSpot postings. So if you set your HubSpot social media posts or emails to go at the recommended times, based on who your customers are in your lists inside of your CRM, HubSpot will automatically send emails when they're most likely to be read and opened, which is incredibly helpful. You don't have to set it. You don't have to guess. You can just go, and HubSpot gets this data by understanding who opens and what the open rates are across all of their billion customers. So super, super helpful. And then again, considering manufacturing lead time. For our customers that have an 18-month lead time, we have to think about a lot of stuff that goes into the marketing leads in order to impact those sales in 18 months' time. It's a little easier, especially if we're in a consumer-based market, but everything that you've got inside of here is super, super easy as long as you're connecting and making sure that you get what you need and that you're measuring and tracking it. So let's talk about that measuring for a second. As I look at measurement for the function of understanding seasonality, you want to look at and connect and understand what your KPIs are. So your key performance indicators are literally the things that go into what people are doing inside of their buyer's journey to get to a sale for you. So looking at your seasonal sales, how many leads you get, how many connections, how many form fills are coming through. Visits and clicks are never, in my opinion, certainly by themselves, good indicators of marketing effectiveness. You want form fills, you want conversions, those MQLs, marketing qualified leads from people that have actually done something on your website other than just visited. I don't care if I have 2,000 or 200,000 followers on my Instagram account if I'm not getting any leads. I don't care if I have 2 or 2 million people on my website as long as I'm getting leads. If those 2 people that visit me are actually new customers every month, I'm happy. I might want to get it to 4, but if I have 200,000 and they're all from the wrong area, or if they're from India or I think the Philippines was on that list of people that were visiting, I'm not going to be selling a deal. Those are people that are on the opposite end. They're trying to solicit my business instead of the other way around. So looking at that is important. Customer acquisition costs, you can do this inside of the campaign tool where people are building it. And that's how we work. So looking at, okay, well, it took this much activity. And so we did this much advertising in order to reach this many thousand prospects, in order to connect with this many hundred clicks, in order to get this many dozen leads, in order to get this handful of clients, right? So you need to work the lifetime cost and the value of that customer as well. Customer acquisition is different than customer lifetime value. And so understanding that If you get one great customer that keeps coming back to you again and again and again, that's worth far more than just a new buy from someone that purchases something super small, right? So making sure that you're taking that into account. And then adapting to market shifts. So looking at your KPIs to identify where are things slow, looking at the decision matrix and when things need to happen in order to impact the right connections and ideas. Analyzing those factors like economic trends. We've got the election coming up. Summer tends to be slower, and just people being around. If you're in B2B or certainly in a information business where people are sitting at their desks, they're not sitting at their desks a whole lot in the summer because there's vacations all the way through, right? So making sure that you're taking advantage of that and or just planning for it. If it's harder to get a hold of people, you're going to need to be a little bit more proactive during that time in order to achieve the same result. And then again, be prepared to adjust your marketing strategies. If something isn't working, pivot to what will. And if something is working, make sure to take advantage of that and see what else that you can do that's similar to that to help you keep kind of taking advantage of where people already are. I love A/B testing, so doing different content focus, doing different outreach strategies, all the way down to different copy on landing pages. There's A/B testing tools in most professional marketing suites. HubSpot has a brilliant and easy way to A/B test things. You just upload two, click a button, and it'll test against the two of them and tell you which one's doing best. If you've heard of Tim Ferriss and 4 Hour Workweek, he came up with the title for his book by doing A/B testing over Google Ads. I think famously he spent maybe a few $100s and tried like 6 different potential book titles. One of them was um, what did it say? Drug Dealing for Fun and Profit was one of the potential titles. And the 4 Hour Work Week was another one of the titles. And of course, the 4 Hour Work Week dramatically outperformed the drug dealer one. And so that's what he went with. And so thinking about and looking at what are the messages that are going to get you the best result in the life cycle of your customer is incredibly important. So that's what I got for now. So I want to set this down for Q&A. And again, we have folks that are youth-focused businesses, enrollments, stronger demands coming up, year-end spends for manufacturing businesses, thinking about all that stuff. It's important. As we do, I'll open up for questions. You can do this a few ways. You can either chat into the Q&A tool or into Google or YouTube. You can chat, or you can raise your hand and we can turn on your mic. So as we do that and as people pop in a couple of questions, I just want to wrap up with a couple of takeaways and what you're going to get as a subscriber or as someone that registered for today's event. First, remember, every business has a season and a number of seasons at that. Make sure that you're planning ahead of slow times and anticipating your audience's needs. I've given you some tools. You can use Google Trends, you can use Google Analytics, you can use HubSpot's reports, you can look at your independent like trade group and see what data they've got and stay ahead of that. Understand that there are lead times and that you need to be ahead of it in your marketing. I did promise a few things here as people are asking questions. So you're going to get a link to the inbound ebook. So this is how to do inbound marketing. Now, this is the idea of generating high value assets. In this case, it's a book that's going to tell you everything you need to know about how to do inbound marketing. Inside of that, from there, you turn that into like a choose your own adventure where you're thinking about all the possible things that people might be interested in based on what they're doing with you. And so that's one of the ebook, or that's the ebook that you'll get from this. We have an entire Academy playlist in HubSpot at bit.ly/busy learning. And then our next webinar, we're actually taking a couple of months off for summer, is in September. So on September 4, connecting HubSpot to your existing systems is coming up. We do have a couple of HubSpot user groups coming up. So if you're in the fractional marketer community, we have a fractional leadership HubSpot user group or hug that we're just getting started with and we're going to do some networking on. And just please stay in touch. We're going to be around all summer, working like crazy, and I hope we get a chance to connect and open up. I don't think I have any questions, so I'm going to give everybody the gift of a few extra minutes. Jim says, my big takeaway is we're not allowing or planning the customer decision cycle in marketing communications planning. Agreed. So the decision is the extra step that you need to think about. And so knowing that, understanding what kind of lead time it takes to capture that attention, we tend to underestimate how long it takes for a decision to happen. We underestimate in the short term and overestimate in the long term. So you're going to be able to do a ton more over a considered year where you're planning out and you're doing regular content and connections than you think. It's going to take less in order to get what you need if you're just trying to mark it out, or you're going to get less if you're just trying to mark it out a week at a time. So lengthen out those lead times, make sure that you measure and check and change. Well, that's it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. This has been tremendous fun. Thanks for listening to me monologue for a while. Trigby on our team was actually leading another class today, so we were a little bit booked and on top of each other. But Trigby and I will be back for our next one in September. Thanks, everybody. Hope this helped you generate buzz without getting stung. Talk to y'all soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.